I mean, it was just god-awful. It was just so overly sentimental, it was so heavy-handed. The characters in there were just so hideous. And there was no one I wanted to even root for. The entire film, I wanted them all to die. Just like, give me, at least Luke Skywalker. You can root for Luke. You know what I'm saying? You can root for Obi-Wan Kenobi. It's like surrounded with a bunch of Darth Vaders. Kill them all.
Well, you said this one particular thing about writing, because you do lots of writing. But if there's one thing it should do, what is it?
Inspire. And let me explain that. You see, the whole purpose.
Technical difficulties here. We have a clip that fell loose. No. How does this look? Right.
Yeah, but
okay, a little.
Art is designed to uplift and inspire, so we can learn and grow from it. And that's one of the things I try to teach people who want to learn from me is, where's the meat? Where's the beef? How does this make the world a better place? How can we learn and grow from this story?
Right.
And it's like, what do we learn from snakes on a plane? That having snakes on a plane is bad for you. Well, I don't think that's going to get you very far in life. It's just a cheap trick to create some sensationalism. But a movie like Tokyo Story, we can learn that, maybe you should show your parents some respect. Maybe you should treat them with, maybe you should go out of your way to do that, And the characters didn't, and it was a heartbreaking story.
I got this next question here, the whole writers and doctors, doctors put in their work. Everyone knows just how difficult it is to be a doctor studying. Heck, I took anatomy at the University of Iowa. That was like pre-med to me. Everything was Greek. No, seriously, everything was Greek. But there's some writers out there, and we also live we live in Iowa. There's lots of writers, very good writers, but some of them feel that they just, the homework they might be, lacking. You have a different take on it. You feel that it's a necessity. The homework is a necessity.
Yeah. They've been teaching the wrong things in these books. They're teaching quick fixes to be good writers, and I'm like, no, you have to train like an Olympic athlete. You have to have the dedication of a doctor. You have to have the multiple skills of a rocket scientist. And you have to train like an Olympic athlete. You have to read. You have to study. You have to be a really great writer. And these books that teach you quick fixes, they can teach you how to be better, don't get me wrong, and you should read a wide variety of them. But to really get good, to really be a great writer, to write classes, you really have to be dedicated. You have to train like an Olympic athlete.
Right. And, when you say homework, what kind of homework are you basing? A little bit specific. Yeah, I think you've kind of answered that question, but break it down specific.
I mean, I've read the complete works of Edgar Allan Poe, and I weave that into my stories, some lines from his various plays, or from his various poems, excuse me. And, I was working with other writers, and they read this line, and they recognized it right away from Edgar Allan Poe's poem, The Bells. And they're like, wow, this guy knows his stuff. It's like what Kurosawa said. He's considered by many to be the best director that ever lived. And he said, I never get to the point where I feel I can relax. I feel that I've never gotten very far on the learning curve. He was at the forefront of all the film directors. You can never feel you can sit on your laurels. You always have to be reading more. You always have to be learning more. And you always have, grow older every day, learn something new every day. You just have to keep moving forward. And the thing that's unique about writers is that we have the toughest job, and we really have to be at the top of our game because we have to break the rules in order to make it work. We're the guys who come up with the blueprint, that all these other people go by. It's funny because I've written things, and they literally took everything I wrote, and it's scene for scene, word for word, right down the line, everything I said. And it's funny because, it's like I was thinking this scene, I wanted it to go on longer, where this guy's, running through the spaceship. And it's like, no, they just did it the way I wrote it. It's like, unless I wrote it longer, it wasn't longer. You see what I'm saying? I thought, they shot it, that would make that longer, but they didn't.
about plays? I know there's a certain style, I'm sure, well, when it comes to writing, there's a certain style. Books, style to that, short stories, there's even a style like that. And there's also writing for screenplays, writing scripts for movies and television. We've discussed that earlier, but here comes the other level of writing, theater or plays.
Yeah, I've done
There's
that too.
is there a different kind of style or thought processes that go into that?
There are some differences, and one of the differences is that literally in terms of locations, you're more limited by a play than you are by a movie. So it tends to be more of a talkative process rather than a visual process with a play. You see what I'm saying? Logistically, that's necessary for the difference in the two formats. But and you're limited in terms of locations. You can't afford to change locations that often. Even if you do unit set, where you'd like change a chair to show you're in a different place at this point, or at a rock out, you still can't be changing locations all the time like you do in a movie script. So logistically, but that forces your writing actually to be tighter and better, in my opinion, as a general rule.
There's when it comes to these scripts nowadays in film, a term for walling. It's called certain style. It seems to be the flavor of the month, and Tyler's going to explain a little bit about this new style that's kind of coming out and how he just kind of
doesn't like it. Well, forewalling is basically where you're just overwhelming the audience with one dramatic scene after another. Like, you might be in a subway and you're attacked by a gorilla, and then you get out of the subway and get to the top of the street, and then you're attacked by a pterodactyl. And then happens, and then there's an explosion, and maybe a 747 will hit a skyscraper and then fall down on you. It's like, or one just big dramatic thing is happening to you, one after another, boom, 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 boom. And after a while, it just starts to become boring. It starts to become repetitive and annoying, where they're just, it's like slap, 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 slap. All right, enough, stop already. And it doesn't really develop the characters. It's just sensationalism. It is like taking sensationalism and we cube it, then we cube it again, then we double it, and then we cube it. We just keep making it bigger, bigger, bigger. But we don't really learn anything, from this process. And I think it's a cheap trick, and I wish they would do it a lot less.
Tell us a bit about your relationship with other writers. What's your relationship with them as far as, approvals and opinions, or other writers seeking other writers' opinions?
And it's interesting.
How does that click work there with other writers?
It's interesting because I've actually had writers that, it's like Amadeus, where I had writers who actually hated me, openly hated me, other writers, but they still admired my work. You know what I'm saying? It's interesting because, I've had that experience with other writers where these guys hated my guts. I truly did. But at the same time, they still wanted my approval for what they'd written. Which I thought was...
Seeking opinions.
Well, it's not just that. But it's like Salieri. He had the approval of most of Vienna. But the one person's approval he could not obtain was Mozart's. It was the only person's opinion who he cared about. He hated the guy's guts, but he realized this guy is the best composer that's ever lived. And it's a huge, in a way, it's kind of a huge compliment that people who hate me that much actually would seek my approval, for what they've written. And it's
I know what that's like.
and it's kind of funny because I mean, for several reasons, because it's like,